You got it? All right. There we go. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Garrett Fuller from MMORPG. I am here with Jeremy Gaffney from Carbine Studios, and we are here to talk about WildStar. And I hope this is all working, because now I'm showing. There we go. There you go. All right, let's see. Perfect. But it keeps clicking. The Skype thing keeps coming up every now and then, but I got you live feed, so you're pretty good. So as long as we're good on that front, I think we're okay. And now I've gone to commercial. So anyways, I know we got a ton of people ready for questions and asking questions and all that kind of stuff. So Jeremy, you did a lot of interviews with us, and thanks so much for jumping on our forums yesterday. That was a huge deal for our readers. And I know you guys have been talking about, I think the best parts about WildStar is to read or all the stuff that's out there that's going through. And I wanted to start because one of the big topics I noticed on all of the interviews that you did in the last couple of days was the differences between raiding and the instances. And everybody was kind of asking how the mechanics work and things like that. Could you go into that a little bit and tell us, kind of expand on some of the things that people had asked and some of the ideas you guys had, and possibly clear some things up that you feel like you might not have talked about?
Sure, absolutely. And so here's our kind of concept around raiding in general is we're big believers in appealing to the hardcore. You know, the game is really, it's built for everybody, but a good chunk of that everybody is us, which is a hardcore set of gamers who likes doing compelling, difficult content. And so as part of that, you know, what we're really trying to do is make a rating system that is top of class for the MMO industry today. So what we want to do is this. The core concept is let's really try to get to a state where we can do interesting, dynamic things that change from week to week. And the key, the sort of secret sauce to us for this is make sure that if you're having different room configurations, you're having different sub-bosses, you're having different environmental hazards, you're changing up the combats. If there's enough variation week to week, then make sure that variation is the same for everybody. You know, the hardcore tends to hate random content. They tend to hate random chance. And why do they do that? It's because it's too newbie friendly and it's too against skill. You know, if you're an expert dice player or if you're an expert poker player, you still lose a big percentage of the time. If you're an expert chess player, you never lose. There's no randomness that says, hey, this time the newbie has a shot. So what we want to do is take all that randomness, take those dynamic elements, and put them on an even playing field every week. And then let all the guilds compete to be who can be the best this week to be able to beat this new configuration. Here's what's compelling about that for us. A, it's competition, you know, which drives all sorts of stuff. We put rewards behind it because it's hard. And it means that if there's a very hard configuration a given week, only a few guilds, only the best of the best might be able to beat the raid that week. But if it's an easy configuration, you know, you got a big lava pit in the room with the boss, and maybe you can figure out how to, you know, all the tanks are kicking them into the lava pit to do extra damage, and so it happens to be an easy configuration. Well, great, then the newbie guilds actually have a chance that week to actually beat the guy for the first time ever. But even for the hardest, still they're competing to, you know, defeat it best, defeat it fast, so that there's a challenge for them. They might be competing against the clock on a given week, while newbie guilds are struggling to survive and try to kill the guy for the first time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, that's the beauty of the dynamics of these raids and instances, right? You're going to be changing things up a fair amount. And, I mean, that really keeps players on their toes. What kind of led you to that dynamic? Because I know for years doing raids in lots of different games, everything was always the same. You knew how to beat the bosses, you did them quick.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things you're adding into these, you know, these systems that just didn't exist when a lot of us came up in MMOs. So
well, if we do our job right, you know, the goal is making it be that the dynamic elements are interesting, not just random for random's sake, but that you actually need to think and strategize about how are you going to beat the boss this week. And some of the better raids out there, I think, do components of that. Hey, this guy has 3 bodyguards. Some of them are healers, and so you better crowd control them. Oh, they're all warriors this week. It's an easier fight. That's the baseline, I think, to build on for having interesting variation where you don't go and look up, here's the walkthrough of, let's go do this synchronized swim dance where we're all standing in lockstep with each other, stand over here, cast more dots, and you're doing this. You figure out how to crack it, and then you repeat it week after week. It's pretty boring in the long haul. I mean, it's better than nothing. It's better than standing around, doing a rep grind or something, but it's not exactly compelling for the long haul. And so what we do is make sure you have to think and reward the guilds that are, hey, give one a few guilds in combination what the week is. And they start, just beating the first challenge. So where that conception come from? It's really taking where the is at, and then it's trying to advance that to the next step. And we cheat a bit too. Our raids get extra compelling off the bat because of how our combat system works. Because the bosses have been communicating, in level 3 we do raid kind of mechanics with the people communicating on the ground. Here's this damage. Don't stand here. Step over here. In the low-level dungeons, you're already learning, hey, stand in this place for this healing spell, or those what would otherwise be kind of raid-like mechanics. You see them really, really early. And so because of this, it makes when we actually get up to raids, it's really freaking compelling. I forget if we've released even our level 17 dungeon, some of the gameplay inside it, but there's some crazy telegraphing and choreography you have to do, and that's just level 17 content, never mind raid content. And that's fun for us. Let's have some challenging content in there and then give really good rewards for it. We want to make sure the skill stays in the MMO front because there's lots of content for soloers and for people who want to do relatively easy content. But let's have skill content in there too, and then give really good rewards for it. It's kind of our mantra, risk and reward ought to be tied real close.
Cool. No, I agree. I think that's a core point in MMOs. I'm actually losing you on video, Jeremy. Can you check your feed over there?
So I think we turned off video because the audio was cutting out, and so given how I look, that's probably not a horrible plan otherwise. Also, I'm sitting here drinking my 4th Diet Coke of the day during this, and it was starting to look like product placement for Diet Coke because it's just sort of my fuel during crunch.
I get you now. I hear you. All right, cool. No problem. I mean, if you guys want to bring the video back, it was doing okay on the broadcast front. So if you guys want to try to bring it back, that would be good. I think we're all right though.
It looks like folks are saying audio is now fine, so we'll leave it audio. Maybe we'll try to throw the video up later, and everybody can watch me try to pee out a kidney as this Diet Coke destroys my intestinal system. Okay. It'll be great. It'll be a world first.
No problem, buddy. No problem. So the biggest question I have is you finally got your closed beta going. And I always love to ask the developers the question, what are some of the lessons you have learned from your first initial, showing the game to players and getting people into the game and everything like that? So what's some of the lessons you guys took right away once you gave the game out to the populace?
So we got a lot of feedback on classes very rapidly. Some of that from player feedback, and some of that, we get a lot of our data out of the logs and just watching out for, hey, what's the usage of all these different spells? Are people using, enough spells on their bar? Are they, what quests are very hard to complete? We do death maps to find out, this big, there's a whole bunch of deaths that happen in a given area. So from all that, we've done a bunch of tuning on that. Some of that in response to feedback, and some just based on, hey, we watch player sessions. We do focus tests every week too, where we bring in a couple of new players, we videotape them playing, we see what user interface elements they get, what they don't get, and tune a lot based on watching those play sessions very directly too. And so that led to stuff like, well, we noticed that espers were over-pulling monsters right in the early areas of Northern Wilds. And so, hey, does that mean that they're it turns out their starter spell, is a pretty long-range spell, and so that people are tending to get overpulls. Well, we can adjust spawns in that area. We've adjusted, hey, mix up the spell order so the earlier spells are shorter range, so the longer range spells come in at later ranges. We do a lot of tuning based on that stuff. And every month we'll sort of see more tuning based on that. So class tuning a bunch of it. We made a whole bunch of performance improvements. Overall, I think performance was pretty good for folks, but there's some areas of the world, like when you came out of arenas, for instance, people were seeing lag if a lot of people came out of arenas at the same time. So we cleaned up all sorts of stuff on the server side and on the client side to make sure our stress test goes super smooth when we do that, hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Cool. I got to ask the question, how are the dev team feeling after their PvP stomping?
Oh, after the massive beatdown that occurred when our
Yeah.
that's the I think it's a mantra on every dev team is that when you start meeting real fans, we sort of assumed that it'd be when we put more of the hardcore guilds in later that we'd get destroyed at PvP, but the even at the early stage, people were crushing us in the level 22 arenas. We ran a couple of different events on that, and destruction was pretty much freeform. I think this is because the devs cheated up to get level 22 characters, and the people who played legitimately up through the content knew their characters much better.
Hmm.
And so the combat team has been leveling up characters now in preparation for the next round of battles now that the level cap is 30, hoping that they can acquit themselves a little more honorably.
Cool. My next question goes down to the different races, and you guys have your Exile and your Dominion, and I know that you've been plotting to launch the Dominion races in the next closed beta. Can you tell us about that and what it's like for you guys?
Sure. So I just popped into the beta last night, and I was playing a Makari Stalker. Makari, of course, are the giant robot race that's part of the Dominion. It's nice seeing everybody get in there. One of the things we track is how many people. Oh, people are saying they can't hear me.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I'm bringing it up. Can you guys hear us? There we go.
I'm seeing great. I'm seeing things.
Good now.
Okay,
Cool.
So, Block Race is assuming that that's part of here. Robot race.
Mhm.
We have people run around as dragons, as humans. We track how many people choose races. We track how many choose each of the classes and the paths. And we also track how long do they last. Do people tend to drop out and then pick a new class or a race for their second attempt? Because it helps us tune, and feedback always comes in. You get a lot of positive feedback off the forums and stuff. I know this is shocking to people in normal MMO forums and things where it always seems like there's a lot of vitriol. Beta forums are usually a lot more positive, and ours in particular have been really good about that. We have a lot of very rational discussion about pros, cons, all that kind of stuff. As we ramp up the number of people in there, I'm sure that we'll get over time, critical feedback and jaded feedback, because that's how we go. Everybody, when you raise up the populations, you got to expect some of that, even if we do all sorts of cool stuff. And we accept it. That's part of the job. But right now, basically, we are tracking not just what people say, hey, I like this or not, but if it turns out people play a given class and then rapidly drop out and start doing a new one, well, maybe we got some issues with that class at low level, or maybe that was just a personality fit. And so far, we have good distributions. As usual, a lot of people choose human. There's time demo. The guys who come off the WoW team are commenting that they saw on launch day in WoW a huge number of people chose human because it's kind of the basic. It's the standard. That's why we actually have humans on both sides, is because if something like 60% of people choose human on launch day, guess what? You end up with a huge faction imbalance if human is only on one faction. And so that's the kind of learning from being a second or third or eighth generation MMO, or whatever the hell generation we are. We've all made sufficient mistakes in the past that we're kind of determined to make in the future.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. One of the things you talked about, and this is really cool, is WildStar being compared to the discovery of Atlantis. What do you love about that plot line, and how are you guys instituting into the game?
Well, it's kind of the vibe we go for. I was talking with Pappy about this. Chad Moore, our narrative designer, uses this reference a lot, and often when he is drunk and on the internet, this will come up as a meme of his. Actually, he does a lot of stuff drunk on the internet. This is going to interfere with his eventual presidential run. The kind of concept is this. If Atlantis were discovered in the modern day, who the hell would go visit it? It's a bunch of different people who are fascinated by the lore of it, and then the archaeologists and the people who want to go discover this. It's the people who are, scientists who want to explore what happened. It's the, adventurers going out there to figure out what crazy stuff might have occurred there. And Atlantis in the real world would be neat, but if Atlantis is more about, the most powerful race in the galaxy with all this crazy technology and crazy magic, and it's all going wrong, we're not really a post-apocalyptic game. We're kind of like middle of the apocalypse sort of game. Mm-hmm. Every zone, we try to have big, crazy Elden stuff that's going haywire. Whether it's those, crystals pulling chunks of land out of the ground and making you float around and super jump, whether it's, asteroids smashing into the moon system, whether it's giant robots blowing up stuff with lasers as they're half dug out of the ground. Every zone, we try to reinforce that story of the Elden and reinforce that crazy technology, crazy magic that's happening there. And we do that for two reasons. The reason you allude to it, it makes for a really compelling story. It's not just Atlantis, it's sort of Lost, You've crashed onto this crazy planet, and now you've got to dig out and figure out what the hell happened here. Why did the Elden disappear? Where did they go? And if something was powerful enough to destroy them, well, what the hell is it going to do to you? Because you're looking around trying to figure out what the heck exactly this might have been. And so it's a very compelling story to dig into, both for the scientists. We're going to be doing a big scientist reveal in the next week or two about what they're all about. And they get more of this kind of backstory than anybody else does. So not just for them, but it's really kind of for everybody. Nobody reads quest text is the joke that we make a lot, and it's true. About 22% of people consistently read quest text. That's why we have Twitter-length quests and then more information so those 20% can go dig in and find out more about what's going on, and they can go play scientists. And so we try to deliver the story in really big sweeps so that you can kind of visually tell what the hell's going on zone to zone. Or if we don't tell you what's going on, we make you wonder what the hell's going on, which is good enough as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the idea of Warplots. And if you can kind of expand on that a little bit.
No, I can't.
Okay.
That's because we're going to reveal them a ton later. But let me have a couple of bars of them because we're actually... so here's current dev status is we've been playing Warplots for about the last 4 or 5 months in gray map form, which is basically where we've laid them out and we make them functional, but we haven't done all pretty polish and the assets and all that kind of stuff. Before we do our big reveals, we'll make them all pretty because you think it doesn't matter about just what the graphics look like, but they actually are really a compelling case when you're doing your game. And so we're doing the kind of final implementation on them right now, and then the way we roll is basically we do an implementation that's full function, and then we iterate. We're an iterative-based dev team. What that means is we test the living crap out of it. And so it's good to test internally, but these things are freaking massive. It's 40v40. Getting 80 of us all to sit down together and play at the same time is a challenge to begin with. But really, it's that same problem as you have with arenas. You need people who've played the game up with legitimate characters in the current form of all the classes and stuff, who really know PvP deeply, who go and do the raids and capture raid bosses, bring them back to their Warplots, and then they've got and then they send them out to go destroy their enemies and destroy their enemy fortresses. That's a lot. It takes a lot to be able to have a significant chunk of players do that and do it enough times that we can polish. Because succeeding in the MMO space is not as hard as everybody makes it out to be. What it is have compelling content as you level up, polish the crap out of it. Don't bunt, don't do a half-ass job on it. And then when you're at the Elder Game stage, take the time to have compelling Elder Games, and then take the time to polish them and do it right. So you're not just launching a patcher and then try to patch everything in after you're live, because you're going to be in hell then. You think you're going to have all this time to cram stuff in, but you never do. And so you got to do that during beta. You got to do that during test. And we all know that, in part because we've done it right in the past, and sometimes I'm sure we do it wrong in the past. But it ain't brain surgery. It ain't brain surgery. So for Warplots, for us, it's about to sort of, what we want to do is make sure we put the polish on it, have some compelling gameplay inside, and then we'll do it inside a beta, and then we'll reveal the whole thing out to the world as it gets its final polish passes. And hopefully it'll be at a state where everybody pees themselves over it, because it's pretty damn fun in the gray map version.
Cool. Hey, listen, that's plenty for people who are looking forward to it. The other thing I wanted to ask you on a personal level is your mentoring system.
Sure.
Most people don't realize you worked on City Heroes and worked on some of the sidekick stuff, and it's a really, really great concept. And tell us a little bit about the mentoring system, because I knew you had touched on it in some of the interviews, but if you can expand on it, that'd be great.
I can, but my contract with Diet Coke requires me to now crack open the second one.
That's right. I'm going to get coffee soon.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a scoop on that. I personally am a real fan of doing social systems inside of your MMO. And why? It's because box games, you can experiment with most interesting kinds of gameplay. You can experiment with combat. You can make an exploration game. You can make a user-created content game like Minecraft and stuff. But social systems, you can only really do them interestingly in an MMO. And it's pretty fascinating to see what the play patterns are. And it's pretty fascinating what happens when you incent players to play well together. And this is true in Asheron's Call. like a billion years ago for the like 7 of your viewers who were alive then. In Asheron's Call, we did an allegiance system where you could recruit your new players. People were ganking newbies at the time. You'd go into Ultima Online and be like, wow, this world's awesome. And then some dude would like stab you in the head and pick up your short sword and steal your 7 gold pieces, and you'd be left going, wow, this game sucks.
Yes.
Or you're compelled and you stick around for the next like 5 years. I worked on the Ultima Online series too. So the in Asheron's Call, we're like, hey, what happens if we take new players and you make them be useful to high-level players? You want high-level players to recruit them, and then the more experience they gain with them, everybody sort of benefits by grouping together and playing together, and you create a very different social experience. And City of Heroes was a natural for sidekicking because the concept is, hey, you tend to level at different places in your buddy, in different paces. I play every day. I'm addicted. I'm playing all the damn time. Woohoo! But my buddy plays maybe an hour or 2 a day, and so he starts lagging behind. Well, how the hell can you still play together? Because that kind of sucks.
Right.
And our job as designers is to sort of fix the things that kind of suck. And so the concept there was, hey, take Batman and Robin. Hey, don't sue me, DC or whomever, but Batman and Robin are out there and they're kicking ass in their various little fashions, but Robin helps Batman, and so if Robin's near Batman, what if you level them up to be kind of almost as powerful as Batman while they're nearby, because there's a synergy of them fighting together, and now all of a sudden you're incenting people of different power levels to group together, because real-world relationships are powerful things.
Yeah.
And so mentoring and rallying for us, it's the next stage of that. And we explicitly added at City Heroes, I helped work on that system too. And Chris Behrens, who's our lead system designer, is also a City Heroes veteran as well. And so we have kind of the next evolution of that, where we, in PvP areas, we make sure that it's relatively balanced. You're still weaker if you're being auto-leveled up to the area, because you want to incent people to explore. You want to send people to, level up. But it means that you're not a trivial kill. You're not like getting sort of ganked over and over and over again trivially like you would be if you were legitimately level 10, the other guy's legitimately level 20. It gives it a bit more balance. And conversely, if you go into a dungeon together, this wasn't clear, I think, in the patch notes too, so it's a good question. Forgive me for soliloquizing, but I like talking, so it's all good.
No, that's all right.
One of the things I don't think was super clear in the patch notes, this is also a voluntary system. You can play dungeons. If you're a high-level dude and you got low-level buddies, you can play them your choice of 2 ways. A, you can mentor your buddies and go do the content at the level for which it was intended and gain, the Elder Game benefits for doing so. You can get more rewards as a high-level guy for intentionally going down and helping your buddies at near their level. Or if you just want to be the badass and go destroy the dungeon for them and kind of trivialize all the fights, hey, that's kind of a legitimate play style. If you want to do that, you can. It's optional. But it's easy, so we're not going to give you as many rewards for it as you would if you take on a challenge. That mantra of risk equals reward applies here too. If you're going to take on more challenge, we're going to give you more rewards. If you're going to intentionally, de-level yourself to play with your buddies, then awesome. We're actually going to incent you to do that, because it's really more challenging than like, hey, I'm the king of the universe, I'm going to go destroy every damn thing.
Yeah. We get a ton of questions. I got to give props to my buddy Terry, because Terry has a big question. We hung out at PAX. You met him. He wanted to know if scientists and settlers will be able to communicate cross-faction. That was a big one.
That's actually a really good question. At the moment, no. At the moment, we're limiting the cross-faction communication. And we've debated a few ways of doing that. My preference, and we'll see, because the social designers, the guys who handle our role-playing and the guys who handle our PvP really get to decide this, because it's on them, not me. My preference is that everything you say turns into a horrible insult about the ancestry or who exactly your mother might have been to the enemy factions. You can say the nicest, friendliest thing, but it comes out of your mouth in their ears as being a horrible insult. So at the moment, Scientist and Settler can't communicate with the other factions any more so than the other pass can. But we are doing, as I mentioned, we're doing a bunch of reveals. Most of the benefits for that really are helping your faction mates. In both their cases, out in the wild, scientists are great at helping your faction mates who are nearby by unlocking different powers and different things in the environment. And settlers, of course, build up the quest hubs and make them stronger, as well as setting up outposts in really dangerous areas so that you can, kick more ass and take more names.
Sure.
And when it comes to the other faction, Whiteveil, we're doing open world PvP is going online in CBT3, which is 5 or 6 weeks from now, somewhere in that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happens, one of the interesting things is going to be see how those settler outposts, where they're building up new guard posts and they're building up new PvP benefits in those open world areas. That's going to be pretty interesting to test out. We have not done a large scale test of that yet. We haven't had in friends and family. We only had about 500 people running around in friends and family, and that's not enough to get a good PvP test.
Right.
So closed beta is going to be fascinating for us next milestone to test that stuff out.
Cool.
Good question.
Yeah, we got a lot more. And the biggest one everyone's asking is flying mounts. There's two, beta and flying mounts. So I'll let you go on those. You want to do flying mounts first?
Hey, dealer's choice.
Okay.
Here's our scoop on flying mounts. I personally, historically, have been a big fan of flying mounts. When we built City of Heroes, one of the really compelling aspects of it was, look, holy crap, you're level 14, you're level 16, and you can fly. The world felt pretty good. The way that world was designed was to use flight from day one, and so I don't feel like there's a big backlash against flight in that time frame. But we've been watching the forums, we've been watching the communities, both ours and other people's, and there is a lot of compelling arguments against naively doing flight right now. So we build our game around flight, because we're like, hey, flight's cool. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been flying around our game world like little idiots. We've been strapping on the capes and flying about. But it's a good argument that you can trivialize some of the content, making explorer puzzles where you can just trivialize it by flying up the end. Well, that's kind of uncool. PvP is affected by it. If everybody can just fly away from you in PvP, or you can't trivially take down flyers, that kind of sucks. And you lose a lot of socializing. There's a lot of space up there in the sky, and all of a sudden people start interacting a lot less if there isn't any, you're not walking around together, fighting together. And so we don't actually have an answer on this, or we have an answer, which is we have flying mounts that we could do pretty trivially because we built for it, but should we? And so we've actually been provoking the debate recently about, because I think there are compelling arguments on both sides. Do we limit flight? Do we put on gas tanks on the vehicles so that they can't go, infinitely, being able to loose at them? Do we put big turrets around the world that are shooting you down in certain places? Do we have you unlock it per zone? We could do any of those things, or we could say to hell with it. We built the world from flight. Maybe it's compelling if you're just flying around all the hell over the place. So it's a really interesting question. We're actually watching debates with great interest on it because it's very relevant to our process. We'll actually make a decision in part by listening to people.
Cool. That's great. That's great. Everybody's asking more about the betas and the stress test betas and how do they negate keys. Can you give us any insight on some dates or anything?
Sure. So CBT2 just went live yesterday. We got about 2,000 new people running around, beating up the game world doing that. We're going to do a stress test. Really, as soon as we get full feedback of how CBT2 is going, make sure things are stable, make sure we're seeing performance that's going right, and then we'll do a stress test of about 15,000 new keys going out for that. Our keys have skyrocketed in the last month or two. We actually weren't really paying attention to our buzz levels very much because, we're just making the game right now. We're not really in the hype mode. Hey, let's, go blah, blah, blah. It's not like we're buying ads or any of that stuff now. So apparently we goofed because we were aiming for about 20,000 keys. As I said, about a month ago, we accidentally got a couple 100,000 keys. And it looks like in the last month, we're now crossing 300-something thousand keys.
Wow.
And those are unique logins, minus we filter out all the spam, we filter all of the duplicate email addresses, all the, clever tricks people try to do, we tend to filter out. And so the hype levels appear to have kind of accidentally skyrocketed a bit. And so we don't, we're not going to complain, obviously, but but that's actually kind of cool. It's nice seeing the boards respond. It's nice seeing the MMO community respond.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody's asking.
Because of that, we're going to drop about 15,000 more people for stress test. Of those people, because we're doing our stress test intending to blow up our servers, everybody who helps us and attempts to do that stress test, we'll let them into the beta. Whether or not the stress test is successful, we'll let them into the full beta as fast as we can as we respond to whatever issues arise from the stress test. And so hopefully that should likely be in the CBT2 timeframe, which is the next 5 weeks. We're in CBT2. And then we're going to drop in a ton more keys into CBT3, or we'll do another stress test if we need to. But the goal is get a server fully loaded with all those people running around and trading items and forming guilds and starting to feel like a real community in there.
Cool. One of the other questions is the housing going to be instance or uninstance? So you're going to have open world housing, or is it an instance section that players will have to enter into?
We've been kind of intentionally fuzzy about that, and here's why. Let me give a sort of honest answer on that. What we've done is we have this technology that lets us change our world at runtime. We get to swap in and out of parts of different world. For housing, that means digging gardens or digging a new hole in the ground and all that kind of cool stuff. On your plot, it means that we can take Warplots and sort of slot them into the ground and then let you fight other giant Warplots. This is what lets us do, there's mining nodes that explode up, a giant worm pops up and eats you, and then you run around and stomach more piece of ore out of inside the stomach. It's going to dynamically attack that stuff at runtime. And so what that means is that we can kind of slot houses in where the hell we want. We've shown it most instances. We made a launch for instance. We'll reveal probably a bit more about exactly what we're doing on all that front. So technology-wise, we have the ability to do it. The question for us for open world housing is, the benefits of it are the world feels more immersive, but the downsides of it are is, you end up with these huge zones that feel like suburbs walking between everybody's houses, and that's kind of uncool. We intentionally stuck our houses on flying land plots so we can stick them into the terrain wherever we feel like it, as you sort of fly your house plot around. And so what feels compelling in terms of, being able to trivially talk to folks or interact with your neighbors, what's compelling about that front? And so what we really want to do is do it right. So we've experimented with a couple different ways of doing it. The only thing we'll commit to for launch is, the instance housing, because we don't like committing to stuff that we aren't actually playing ourselves and loving. But do we have other plans around that? I mean, God, yes. The question is, hey, when do we want to do it? And we have a ton of features, and so we want to make sure we don't overextend ourselves. We're not overpromising, that we're not overhyping stuff, and that we get in only what we say we can get in. So even though it seems like we got a ton of stuff, and we talk, hey, we got discoveries and these dynamic dungeons and raids and warplots and all this, that, and the other, we're actually only trying to talk about the stuff that we know works, and not really hype stuff that's like, hey, if we get an extra, spare team for a spare amount of time, they'll go stick in this, that, and the other. No, we're trying to only we're trying to not overhype, I guess, is the short form.
No, it makes sense. It's a tricky thing. I can remember playing older games and running through the endless amounts of housing to get from one place to another. I won't mention names. One of the other questions that was really...
I'll mention names, actually, because I can cheat. I founded Turbine, so I can talk about Turbine products.
Sure.
It was interesting. They had a pretty cool little housing system, but they did, straight up instance neighborhoods of about, you have about 30 houses in a neighborhood. I forget the exact number. But there's a trick there. Here's math and stuff. Let's suppose that you're online at a given time. How many other people in your neighborhood are online right now? Sounds like a trick question, but I know what it is. It's like 20% is about your normal concurrency, maybe 10% if you're a mature game. What's that mean? You got 30 houses in an area. Only 3 people are actually logged in at a given time out of those 30 houses. Then, how many people are in houses? Hey, another trick question. You spend, depending on the game, maybe 10% of your time in housing. That means a third of it housing at any time. It means that, and guess what? Your house back to. And so, do a neighborhood where that is static means that it's empty most of the time, and it's very hard to avoid that math. It's almost like you'd have to stick houses on giant flying plots that could be moved around dynamically if you wanted to make sure that you had, a full neighborhood at any given time. And so that's part of the reason we set our stuff up from day one, along those lines, is to make sure that, we can have answers around those sorts of fronts. And we also cheat in another way. We let settlers build all that cool housing stuff. We let them build that up in all the quest hubs and things. So there is actually, open world housing type things, because they're building new buildings and vendors and shops and taxi nodes and all that kind of stuff out in the open world. Because they've signed up and said, hey, we're settlers. We love building stuff. Okay, here you go. Have at it. The question is how much should we open that up for other folks to do as well, besides settlers, because everybody's kind of compelled by that stuff. So we'll kind of see. We're going to experiment around with a couple solutions, and we'll see what we end up doing.
Cool. Somebody wants to really get a good explanation of the scientist. One of the writers, one of the questions on the forum here is, what's the difference? Like, why would you choose a scientist versus a soldier class, and what kind of perks do you get from the scientist?
So, your path does 2 things for you. I like 3 things for you. I like 20 things for you. Here they are. One of it is it determines what kind of quests your area is seeded with and missions, because 75%-ish, 70% in some zones of the area is stuff for everybody to do, a mix of exploration and fighting and all that kind of stuff. Then 25-30% of it is about your path. And so for explorers, that's, finding vistas and stuff. So for scientists, what that is it's unlocking interesting properties of stuff in the area. And it's like a collecting mentality. If you have to get every achievement in a game, you're probably a scientist because they're like a collector style. If you got to catch them all, Pokemon, that's scientist mentality. Right. There's this like fundamental human OCD kind of need for us to organize stuff and scan it all, and that's the scientist. Or if you're really into the story, we unlock more lore and more backstory for you. Mm-hmm. And so let me give an example of that versus the soldier. Let's suppose that there was a zone that was full of, it's an ancient battlefield, and so there's robots scattered everywhere across the landscape. And you look, there's like, wow, what the crap happened here? Well, if you're a soldier, we don't reveal all that much of what the crap happened here to you. Maybe you can go digging through some quest text, find the odd journal or Tales from the Fringe or other stuff and find out exactly what went on here. But as a scientist, you study, you see all these robots lying around and you start sending your little scan bot out to find out what's going on, and you get to find out, hey, here's what happened in this area. These are the people who fought here. This is the general's tomb who fought here. The soldier's like, hey, cool, haunted place in the middle of this robot battleground. Scientist's like, aha, this is exactly who this was. And by studying these robots, he starts reanimating them because he's figuring out how they work so that they start leaping up and fighting alongside you. The soldier's like, hey, what's this button do? Pushes it, and the hordes of robots come out and start attacking him. That's the difference in play style, is the quest you get being holdouts or test weapons out or assassination missions as a soldier versus study this, unlock this, solve this puzzle as a scientist. And it's the rewards for what you get as you do. Hey, you found a data cube. Soldier, no extra benefits. Scientist, woohoo, free path XP for finding this data cube telling you what the hell's going on.
Right.
So it's rewards, it's what we will give you XP for, and then it's also the rewards you unlock as you level up. So that's kind of the difference.
Cool.
I'm incapable, apparently, of giving a short answer on anything.
No, that's okay. That's okay. The next one, everybody's asking about the pay model, and you can be happy to shoot it down right now, but we're getting tons of pay model coming across the screen here.
So we've done an advanced set of studies on pay models, and we've determined that everybody hates every pay model in existence.
Very true.
And I think, honestly, pay models nobody loves a pay model. Everybody hates a set of pay models. And so so we're not revealing what we're doing yet, but what we're actually doing is studying out and figuring out, hey, what can we do that is compelling, to the users where you feel like you're getting your money's worth. Our mentality is play how you want to play, and so how can we let people, get the best of the various models across, what the options we can provide are. So that's goal one. Goal two is make a crap ton of money because, we're kind of in business to make a crap ton of money, so I'm not going to diss that per se. I like money. But what we got to do is do what's right by the people playing as well, because guess what? If they're pissed off and they won't pay, then, we can have the cleverest, pay system in the world, and if people don't like it, they aren't going to pay.
Yeah.
So we will talk more about that coming up. It's not so much that, we have been looking at it, we've been figuring out the tweaks of what we want to do, and our goal is make it compelling. Our goal is not do hey, you feel like you're getting gouged every time you turn around. And we acknowledge that people are very charged up on pay models.
Yeah.
Nobody likes paying.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably the hardest decision for any game right now, especially MMOs. But even going forward, when you get these new consoles out and this DLC system and stuff like that, you may be facing a free-to-play wall on that front too.
Yeah, and and we'll see. The market's changing too. I thought DLC was the stupidest thing ever when it first came out, but I played like Civ 5 a lot, and I'm like, whenever they put out a new thing, I admit I'm kind of like, well, $2, it's not that bad for a play Korea or whatever.
It's true. One of the guys overseas is asking if there's going to be separate servers for like Europe and the U.S. or North America.
So I'll answer that in two ways. One in a normal voice and one in like a high squeaky voice. No, actually, I'll answer that in two other ways. For beta, today what we're doing is we're playing on our data center that's in Dallas. We actually have a data center that we've set up in Frankfurt, but we don't have full beta hardware there yet, and we need the support structure in for it.
Right.
And so if I can give the honest answer on that, it is we're letting people from Europe play now on our U.S. servers because they basically said, hey, you guys are jerks for not letting us do so, and we kind of listened. Cool. And so we tested out with some tight fans who said, yeah, actually the play experience is pretty good, and so we're letting people play today in Dallas. but we're also working to get that Frankfurt Center set up. And then, of course, for launch, yeah, we have servers worldwide that we're queuing up as well.
Awesome. Somebody's asking a question back to the raid mechanics, and they said, give us an example of something in the raid mechanics you guys are working on that the hardcore raiders haven't seen yet. I don't know.
Sure.
If you can
There's
pick
a couple
something out.
things. Here's low-hanging fruit like that, so that we still have stuff to reveal, later as we do more of it. The combat system really helps with raiding from even our early experiences with it. And the reason why is that when you put your telegraphs down on the ground, at low levels is cool. It's like, saying, I'm going to attack over here, and you don't miss monsters by knowing where your spell hits or not. At high levels, you're communicating, and so raids have kind of emergently turned into this. You're weaving this tapestry on the ground of all the spells that you're casting, positive and negative, and the monsters are changing the tapestry by saying, there's this big hellstorm I'm putting down over here, so it's going to drive you away from it. And so just that component alone has really actually made raiding be interesting, even for those of us who played raids in a ton of games for a long time. And why? It's a way of having instant communication that is not Skype. It's not one guy yelling out more dots. It's not doing a synchronized swim of we all stand over here and then we move over there. It's communicating in real time on the ground with every member of the raid, so you're not all overlapping each other. It makes raiding very compelling just based on that. And this means we can have much more complex raid mechanics than your average game, because those dynamic elements, you can't do a ton of them in normal MMOs because you can't communicate to go defeat them in real time unless you're all yelling at each other on Skype or you're marching around like an army. Yeah. Now, there's more where they can actually communicate. Here's a kind of rare event. And they communicate it by, painting it on the ground, and you react to it, and you actually, God forbid, need to sort of think in real time and not do the dance that you memorized the first time the raid got broken by some other guild. Right. And so personally, I don't want to hype it up too much because, we're all know the industry is full of stuff going, yes, this is the next great thing, and woohoo, the next, revolution in gaming. Honestly, from playing it, it's pretty freaking cool. And so I suspect that what we'll find as we get more, A, as we tune up the systems, B, as we, improve, and we do all the polish and we get the systems going, I suspect that we'll be hearing really good stuff out of the guilds as they get in there and we release them out NDA and they say what they're talking about. But I think even the verbal, that people can kind of get the concept of what's there, because it's been very exciting to both our own internal people who are raiders and also the raiders we've talked to out in the community. You combine that with enough dynamic elements so that, again, you need a strategy guide to approach the raid, not a walkthrough of how to trivially solve it. Right. And then you combine that with competition where, on a weekly basis, we reward the, server bests for how fast people can defeat the raid. And fast, like, how quickly you can do a speed run through it, not fast as in, we stayed up until 4 a.m., so we did like a, world firsty kind of thing. Right. That's pretty compelling. So I suspect that we'll be able to attract a pretty good raiding crowd through those elements if we do our jobs right and we execute well on that. When we put our money where our mouth is as that stuff goes live.
Cool. It's a big topic. The other one, which is a good question, keeps coming by, is the cosmetic gear. Are you going to be able to customize cosmetic gear? How's your character going to look? That's a big part of playing.
Yeah, God, yes. So we have sliders in right now for customization of your person. Then you can customize your gear by changing around the stats in it. And then you can actually costume yourself where you can, look like gear A while, wearing gear B. Right. Those are all things that we actually have working in different fashions right now. And so the short form is yes. All those are things we want to tune up and improve too through feedback. Right. We're also working on a couple other systems for even deeper customization because it's cool. That's good. That's a good question. It's, being attached to your character is key.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorite parts in any game. Another one, which everybody keeps asking.
Yeah.
It's coming across.
With the fact that unannounced races is we're going to be revealing them probably fairly soon. I have a schedule of when we reveal everything going forward to infinity, but and oh my God, there's a crap ton. Like seriously, we could start doing, we can start doing reveals at a fairly rapid pace. We've kind of picked up the pace, but we sort of realized, oh my God, we have so much stuff that we haven't talked about yet that we probably need to start getting through it, especially if we'd like to ship in our lifetimes. So we'll do some race reveals, I think, pretty quick. Cool. I don't know I can talk about too much of that yet. They're all redacted.
That's all right. There's a bunch of different things coming over. and I'm trying to find another one that's been really good. It's been pretty consistent. A lot of people are asking about esport aspects in other games, like tournaments like that. With WildStar, are you looking at potential VPs or area scenarios for esports?
So yes and no. The part of that, we are already really compelled, unless I'm on our combat team, which is your handed to you on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Fortunately for them, we don't have spectator mode though, which I think is a really key component of esports. And that's fortunate because their embarrassment is only broadcast to the world, via my voice right now, and not even video of me embarrassing them.
That's all right.
And so we will support a lot of that stuff, but at heart, we're an MMO more than we're a pure esports game. There's a leveling component. The best esports games are drop in, and it's underspent skill based. For us, it is, it's participation. You got to level up. You got to earn your stuff. You got to participate in different things. A lot of these are kind of team efforts. Warplots isn't just about, hey, where I'm going to pop on my Warplot and do it. It's having people good at building that stuff. It's having crafters in your guild who are going to construct a lot of stuff for you. It's having a raiding section of your guild out there beating up and doing the challenges to defeat raid bosses in ways where you can capture them and bring them back to your Warplot. That takes it away from being a pure esport, where our game as a whole is an esport more than any one component of it ought to be sectioned off and sold as an esport thing. And so over time, we support a lot of the spectator mode and all that cool stuff, and do we think it's really compelling? Yeah. Yes, we do. Do I expect to be the next big esports wave sweeping the nation? No. I want to be the next big MMO that sweeps the nation more than I want to try to be, the next League of Legends.
Right.
I mean, I'll take a couple of billion people playing my game. Don't get me wrong, but but we're an MMO more than we're strictly an esport.
No, I think it's cool, and I think it's cool you stay true to that. One of the other ones people are asking, I'm going to go through quick now because we're coming close to the end. Is
speed round. I'll actually talk
speed
about
round. So role players are looking for support, and everybody asked that question too, and it is important. A lot of people love to role play in an MMO.
So we've been sticking more and more. So we think we have a really compelling way of doing of helping out role players, which is adding more and more housing for it. In particular, it's also about making sure the paths have things which are not just about your game style in terms of, hey, here's strict up powers, but things that actually help you tell a compelling story about who you are as a player. And so we've been trying to add as many sandboxy elements as we can, especially around paths, especially in the higher level areas, because we think that helps role playing. But also we've been trying to allow people to really get access to a ton of that in housing, so you can set up a compelling area for yourself. Festival plugs where you can have parties and things like that, and things that are, what you need is a role player in my mind, and role players will have different opinions, is you need to have a world that's compelling enough, and you need to have those kind of sandbox elements that you can really build off of and riff off of and make your own story in the game. So we're doing our damnedest to do that, and also feedback's really welcome as people get in, play the game in beta, or sign off on the boards, because it's among the communities we really respect and we want to support.
Cool.
That wasn't fast,
that was good. Everybody's asking world PvP, open world PvP. That's a big one.
So everybody's going to be getting into open world PvP and CVT3 and starting to beat the crap out of each other. We are putting most of our Elder Game efforts not around doing like a Dark Age of Camelot style, 3-faction open world objectives things. We're putting most of that effort behind Warplots, because that's where it's large-scale consensual PvP. We do have PvP flags, so there's open world PvP throughout the world. We're not big believers in having open world objectives in every zone, because I've soliloquized, I think, on this in the forums. The short form is the bulk of players pass by those things, and so they sort of sit there empty when most of the players aren't there for most of the time.
Right.
So we'll probably muck with that in the Elder zones, especially because that's where players are there for a long time, and it's compelling to go back and forth and that kind of stuff.
Cool. Australia. Somebody's asking about Australian servers. There you go.
So we have a couple of Australian testers actually in the beta right now.
Awesome.
We've seen more lag from Australia than we have from Europe, though, as I've been reading the feedback in the forums and that sort of thing. And so we'll kind of test out and see whether we ought to do a server set that is in Australia, or whether we only hit civilized countries. Oh, geez, I just picked on Australia accidentally.
It's all right.
And so we'll see. We'll keep on working on that. I don't think I'm a big fan of Australian games in the past, and so I'd like to have a strong support of that. but we'll also test. We'll see if we have enough users there to really support having a couple server sets and having and making sure that we have support that is local and can handle, and on the right time zones and all that.
Right. Next one real quickly is about crafting and crafting professions. I know you had talked about it a little bit. Can you expand on it real quick?
Dude, this is something that actually tears me a bit because we have some, I think, really compelling crafting stuff that we have in the game right now. And so we're leaking out some of that now because we're doing our patch notes live because we're just trying to be transparent. But I'm really stoked to get those sort of fully polished and then do like a sort of big Wata reveal of them because the components of them I think are really compelling. We do a new kind of advancement behind them so that leveling up is not just, make 40 bronze swords and then make 60 bronze, whatever the hell the next thing is in line.
Right.
We like doing consignment quests, so there's actually some questing around it. We do a very different kind of system around how we do that advancement than your standard like level bar. And we have a really neat way to do exploration inside of recipes. And so some of that we're kind of leaking now, talking about coordinate crafting and things like that. But I'd really like to do a big compelling reveal around all of that put together because personally I'm excited. Only about 10 or 15% of the community tends to be hardcore crafters, but they're a really important 10 or 15% because they're some of the glue that binds the community together. And so we like supporting them even though it's a subsection. And so they're an important crew to us. So we'll see. We'll be revealing more of that coming up.
Cool. One of the other ones that goes along those lines is the how the economy is going to work. Are you going to have central access points to your central economy, like auction houses or something like that?
Yeah, we actually have auction house. The system went in last milestone. It wasn't in the patch notes because I don't think we attached the UI to it yet, or there's only a bare bones UI, so I don't think we exposed that to the beta testers yet. It's actually a very important component right now in beta because it means that you are effectively playing not just with the people logged on at the same time as you, but you're playing with the sort of global community. So it's actually an important social tool. So yes, we have an auction house, and yes, it's sort of a central hub of driving a lot of the community.
Cool. Another one that keeps coming across is passive emotes.
Yes, we have a bunch of them. We have really good animation team, as you probably see from videos and that kind of stuff. A lot of those guys actually came off of World of Warcraft back in the day. They have a lot of emotes. I'm looking at the questions too. No, there are not brothels in the game at the moment. I'm sorry.
There's some crazy ones. What about the auction houses going across?
I'm not a big fan of it. We have technology that lets us do it, and there's been debate about it. I'm personally not a big fan because I like being on a brand new server where you're the richest guy on the server because you went out and farm the early stuff, or you're at top level, and that economy is I think has a benefit from having local maxima and minima by having different servers with different economies in different stages. But there's a debate on it. So doing auction houses, there has been about it.
Cool. Everybody just wants keys at this point. That's what I'm seeing, right? Are you seeing it too? Just beta keys right across.
15,000 of them are going to be pretty happy pretty soon.
Awesome. That's great news. I think everyone will be excited. What about racial bonuses? We got a few minutes left. We'll go quick.
Racial bonuses. We haven't added many of them into the game to date. A lot of the plan for that is making sure that there's payoff in the Elder game by changing how much work you need to do in the Elder game to unlock things. We don't like gimping you by saying, hey, you have a crowd control escape ability and you're an idiot if you didn't pick the race that has it, so you get destroyed in PvP. We like to adjust the cost of things so anybody can earn that kind of escape ability, but maybe Orans are better at it because they're skinnier and stuff. And so it's cheaper, and Granoks suck at it because they're big and fat. And so that's the kind of balancing we prefer doing.
Sure. What about attunements, item attunements, and things like that?
Personally, we're fans of you have to do work to unlock the different raids and stuff. I think most games in vanilla mode, when they first come out the gate, ought to intend to incent some difficult and challenging and fun too, like some hardcore quest lines to unlock that sort of stuff, especially going into raiding and that kind of thing.
Right.
And then I think it makes sense as you do expansion packs or as you're, broadening your base over time to ease off on that. I actually think that that's a pretty natural cycle for games to take. Other games have disagreed though, some are like, hey, they suck. It just feels like a grind or whatever. No, if we can make them fun, we'll do it. And if we can't, then we won't.
Cool. I want to end with probably a simple question. Is one of my favorite systems is the housing system that you guys have. And I know a lot of people are asking back and forth about that kind of stuff. Can you interact with your props and the items in the house and things? Just give us a quick 1-minute housing part of awesome, because what you showed us in Boston was unbelievable.
Yeah, so here's the thing. We think housing should actually be functional. Decorative
Mhm.
stuff is fun. The first day we added in housing decoration, we stuck in a couple hundred, $400 into it where you could decorate, which sounds like a lot, and I guess it is. Like, I'm not sure how, I haven't checked competitive housing, but that's probably a lot. Now we've got, probably 1,000 or two in there.
Right.
The first day we enabled that, the team was only about 100 people at the time, and they put 64,000 objects down in their housing plot during our lunch play session. Because
Right.
it's fun, just decorating, especially when it
Sure.
has physics. You can build new lofts for your house and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty damn cool. But since then, that was a while ago, and so we've been adding systems to it. And so to us, it's compelling when, here's an interesting thing to talk about, housing dungeons. We haven't talked about them really publicly yet. But when we were all off at PAX, we've had a plan for a while. We don't announce most of what's in the hopper because we like to do it and then talk about it.
Yeah.
So when we were off at PAX East, all the senior management was off there, and I'd wanted to kill housing dungeons because we never talked about it. It's a lot of work. They're cool, but hey, why not? And so the team was like, no, screw that. And so the programmers, artists, and designers, without any of the managers around, said, hell with that. They came in on the weekend. They organized themselves into groups. They each tackled a couple housing dungeons, and they knocked out 8 housing dungeons over the course of the weekend.
Wow.
And so we came back. Yeah, the secret here is probably have upper management leave on a regular basis and things go faster. And so you knocked out all these housing dungeons. So you go find these objects out in the wild. You come back to your house, and then you sort of, you unwrap the sort of treasure map, and you find, hey, here's a dungeon entrance into this cool place, and now you bring your friends over, and you go through this kind of small group content together, and it's cool. And the best of those are things where you unlock stuff that's then, hey, you cleared out all the goblins, and now you go harvest gold out of their cave for the next week. So it's both an adventure, but then it's also a reward, which is expanding your house in kind of a new, interesting way for a period of time. So that kind of stuff's actually been pretty cool.
It's very cool.
And God bless the team, man. I love that esprit de corps where people they're not letting evil executive producer guy cut the stuff. They're like, screw that, we're going to come in and do it no matter what you like.
No, that's good. It's always a team effort. Last question, really quick, we got to end, is guilds. What can guilds expect? Is there guilds? Is there logos? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we have guilds, we have logos, we have titles, all that cool stuff. We haven't revealed a super ton about it, in part because, we have a systems in there, which is, it's good and it's functional, but, hey, what do we feel like adding onto it next? Which a lot of which requires beta feedback. What we have added is the circle system, which is basically like a light version of the guild system where you can kind of more hang out with your buddies, without having to commit to exactly one. You can be in a number of these things. So you can group a bunch of people with like interests, and it gives you sort of the socialization benefits now of not just having, hey, there's exactly one tight group of people that you have to hang with or have, they're only ones you can communicate with easily, but hey, you can be a lot more casual about this. And so that system's actually been pretty cool in concept. We probably want to call it something other than circles because I don't want to, get confused with like, Google Plus-y kind of circle-y things, but it's a cool little system. And it works pretty well for incenting you to casually bond with other people in the community, which is the sort of secret to making your MMO compelling is how can you make people form interesting social bonds? It goes back to that mentoring or allegiance system or what we're doing with settlers and all that is it's really all about, hey, how can you have people casually make friends and have fun together?
Yeah, cool. It's a great note to end on, Jeremy. And I got to say goodnight to everybody. I know you got work to do. But listen, thanks so much, guys. We're going to bring a ton of WildStar content coming up this summer. We're really excited about it. Bill's excited. Rob's excited. We're all raring to go. And everybody wants beta keys, Jeremy.
Yes. And reading through for a quick speed round, we haven't talked anything about mini pets yet. For circles are not cross-group. Glad that people love the devs. We're trying to spread as much information as humanly possible. Yes, I'm currently wearing pants. And anything else that I can cover, I'm happy to. Hit me up on forums. I try to drop by MMORPG forums and chat on a semi-regular basis.
Awesome.
We're talking to, basically everywhere we can. We like interacting with the fans, so that's what it's all about.
Cool. I think the level of transparency you guys have is amazing. So I love it. So cool.
Great. Hey,
all right, man.
Yeah.
Have a great night, Jeremy. Thanks again. And
Cool.
We are
Thanks
done,
for
guys.
the audience too. Appreciate the questions.
No problem. Thanks.